In this video, we will be talking about the genomic analysis of COVID-19 for May 1st, 2020. For the full situation report and more regionally focused analyses, please visit our website at nextstrain.org. This week, we focus on outbreak dynamics in Central and Eastern Europe. For this report, we analyzed 4,442 publicly shared COVID-19 genomes. By comparing these viral genomes to each other, we can characterize how COVID-19 is moving around the world and spreading locally. We currently have sequences from samples collected across 6 continents. While this data enables us to infer many useful characteristics, it's important to emphasize that our conclusions are limited by the available data. For example, the map shows many samples from Iceland, the UK, and the Netherlands. This does not necessarily indicate that SARS-CoV-2 is circulating more broadly around these areas. Rather, we just have more data available from these countries. The size of each circle on the map indicates how much data is currently available from that area, rather than the true size of the outbreak. We will start this report with samples from Russia. We see that they are scattered both geographically across Russia and genomically across the tree. This indicates that the epidemic in Russia was sparked by many separate introductions, rather than a single introduction followed by within-country spread. While there are a few samples towards the bottom of the tree that are most closely related to Asian cases, the majority of Russian samples descend from European lineages. An example of frequent importation can be seen by zooming in on samples from Moscow. There are a few clusters of cases which are most closely related to other samples from Moscow, indicating likely local transmission. However, most samples from Moscow are most closely related to samples from elsewhere, consistent with importation. Given the number of confirmed cases in Moscow, it's likely that at least some of these introductions led to further local spread, but we don't yet have enough data to see this. We can look at St. Petersburg as a counterexample. There are samples from St. Petersburg across the tree, indicating that there have been multiple introductions. Contrastingly, if you click Explore the data yourself and zoom into the main cluster in the center of this view, we can see a large clade that is made up entirely of samples from St. Petersburg. This pattern is consistent with one of these introductions to St. Petersburg taking off to spark widespread transmission across the city, starting around the first week of March. This large outbreak cluster is most closely related to samples from Western Europe, although we cannot rule out the possibility of an unsampled intermediate transmission from elsewhere. The data from the Czech Republic show a mix of these two patterns. There are at least 7 instances where a sample isolated descends from a virus that was most likely circulating elsewhere in Europe, indicating new introductions between March 1st and April 2nd. For 5 of these introductions, we also see closely related local cases sampled over time. This is consistent with local transmission. From this, we can say that there were at least 7 introductions to the Czech Republic. At least 5 of these likely led to further local transmission. Here, from the middle of the tree, we see a string of cases sampled from many different provinces around Turkey. Some of these cases have reported travel history to Saudi Arabia. Normally, we might assume that returning travelers have passed the virus to household members or neighbors back home. Interestingly, though, the travelers' cases were often sampled from different provinces than the most closely related cases. This indicates that there have been extensive mixing of viral lineages, reaching many provinces of Turkey within 1 week. We may also speculate that a large gathering could explain these observations, although we would need additional epidemiological data to further investigate. We have 15 sequences from Poland. Of these 15, at least 11 of them represent separate introductions from elsewhere in the world. As in Moscow, given the number of reported cases, we might expect that several of these introductions have seeded local transmission chains in Poland, but we can't yet see this in genomic data. In March, 20 sequences were submitted from Hungary, Latvia, Slovakia, and Slovenia. While we don't yet have enough data from these countries to draw firm conclusions, we applaud these early efforts and will continue to monitor the incoming data. In conclusion, here are some takeaways from our report this week. SARS-CoV-2 has been introduced to Russia many times. Moscow's outbreak is highly heterogeneous. There have been multiple introductions to St. Petersburg. One of these introductions, from Western Europe in early March, sparked a large cluster of locally transmitted cases. Following repeated travel-related introductions, there has been extensive and rapid mixing of viral lineages across Turkey. There are at least 5 local transmission chains circulating around the Czech Republic. There have been at least 11 separate introductions of the virus to Poland. And we have received early samples from Hungary, Latvia, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Here are some steps you can take as an individual. Practice strict social distancing, especially if you're in a vulnerable group. Remember that even if you're not super vulnerable, many people around you are. Follow these practices to protect others. Wash your hands like you just chopped a jalapeno and have to change a contact lens. Stay home as much as possible, especially if you're sick. And lastly, if you're an employer, encourage your employees to stay home whenever possible. Here are some other steps your officials can take. Some examples are to make testing free and broadly available, put strong social distancing measures in place, fund and implement extensive contact tracing efforts, and lastly, financially support those impacted by social distancing measures. We would like to acknowledge the amazing and timely work done by all scientists involved in this outbreak. Check out our weekly reports, which are also available in different languages on our website. Thanks for watching.